Indiana must recognize the marriage of one same-sex couple. That's the order a federal court judge gave yesterday. The two women asked the court for an emergency recognition of their marriage because one of them has ovarian cancer and doctors don't know how much longer she'll live. The ruling doesn't mean much in a practical sense for other same-sex couples because it only applies to the one couple. But the women are part of a larger lawsuit challenging the state's marriage laws, and it could indicate how the judge is likely to rule in those cases. Jashin Lin talked to some of the other women involved in that case, and as she reports, they're still in limbo.
Ray Baskin and Esther Fuller met as business partners 24 years ago. Baskin lived in Manhattan and Fuller lived in Indianapolis. After a long-distance courtship, they decided they wanted to live in the same city. Baskin relocated to Indiana, and she and Fuller moved in together.
Go ahead.
Fast forward 24 years, Baskin and Fuller have joined 4 other couples in a lawsuit filed by LGBT civil rights organization Lambda Legal against Indiana's marriage statute. Unlike many other same-sex partners, the two have not considered getting married in another state.
I took my taxes in to the guy who does them for me today because those forms make me crazy. And I said, hopefully by this time next year I'll be married. And he said, you know it's going to be a mess because I don't even know how to do it because you have to do it one way for the federal and another way for the state.
Indiana already had a fight this year over HJR 3, a bill that would have added the state's same-sex marriage ban to the Constitution. Lawmakers changed the language of the proposal so the earliest it could go to the voters now is 2016. Before the dust had even settled, though, the first lawsuit challenging the state's existing law had been filed. By the end of the legislative session, 4 more lawsuits piled on.
We are preparing to move forward with arguments on behalf of all same-sex couples within the state of Indiana to fully and finally rule Indiana's ban against marriage unconstitutional.
Ken Falk is the director of the ACLU in Indiana. His group filed one of the suits on behalf of 15 couples. He says the legal challenges come at a time when public and judicial opinions are changing.
Supreme Court in Windsor seemed to intimate fairly strongly that targeted laws on same-sex couples would not withstand even the lowest level of scrutiny under equal protection because of the importance of marriage in society and in life. And I think that has emboldened advocates around the country to attack individual states' laws, which is why you're seeing this done all over now.
Indiana Attorney General Greg Zeller is defending the state's law. His spokesman says it's their policy to not comment on pending litigation, but in a statement, Zeller says, "As Indiana's Attorney General, I will represent our state and defend our statute now and on any appeal to the best of my skill and ability, as I swore an oath to do. As state government's lawyer, I must defend the state's authority to define marriage at the state level within Indiana's borders." Conservative organizations American Family Association of Indiana and Advance America did not respond when reached for comment. Meanwhile, Ray Baskin expressed hope that the situation may be different this time next year.
It's not fair. It's not right. I should be able to say to the whole entire world, this is my wife whom I absolutely adore.
Baskin and Fuller's lawsuit is just one of 5 lawsuits that have been filed against the state. They've all been assigned to the judge who handed down yesterday's ruling. To talk to us more about these cases, we're joined by Deborah Whitus. She's an associate professor at the Indiana University Maurer School of Law. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for inviting me.
To start off, this is more than happening just here in Indiana. There's also a bigger national picture. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So obviously this issue has been brewing for years and years now, but really when the Supreme Court decided last summer a decision that struck down the federal ban on recognizing same-sex marriage has set off a new wave, and we've seen challenges bubbling up just in almost all the states now that don't permit same-sex couples to get married.
Now in these, there are more than one lawsuits as we saw in the piece. Will the judge rule on each one individually?
I believe that they've been consolidated, so I would expect that there'll be one ruling, but I'm not sure on that.
What does this ruling say in terms of Indiana's law on gay marriage? Is there a
Well,
bigger
you know,
picture here
it's
in
a
the state? Yeah.
preliminary ruling about this one couple because of the dire situation of the health of one of the women. The judge needs to determine that there's at least some chance that they will succeed, but really he's balancing that against the harm to this couple of not having the marriage recognized, and because of her health condition, that harm could be quite significant.
Now, let's just say that the judge does say that Indiana's law is unconstitutional. Then what happens? Will people automatically be able to go down to the courthouse and get married?
Well, most likely what will happen is what's called a stay, which kind of puts it on pause while the state decides whether or not to appeal, and I would expect it would be likely to appeal, and then the appeal progresses.
Well, and there is that confusion at times. It seems like where a judge in some state does issue,
Right, Utah or Michigan.
and then everyone goes to get married, and then there's that hold. Is there any advice for those same-sex couples when something breaks to
Well, you know,
kind of
certainly if
limit
a
that
couple has
confusion?
been waiting, you know, I understand the impulse to go out and get married, and it can't hurt. It just may or may not be recognized in Indiana as an appeal progresses.
A lot of people are saying that it doesn't matter, all this is going to end up with the U.S. Supreme Court. What do you think?
I think it is likely that it's going to end up with the U.S. Supreme Court. What I do think matters is that what we see is judges across the country looking and weighing these arguments, and just with remarkable consistency holding that there's not a good enough reason to deny same-sex couples the right to get married. And these are all smart judges too, weighing the same evidence that the Supreme Court will. So in that sense, I think it matters.
We've been following this for quite a while here as well, and we saw the demonstrations by Freedom Indiana and then those in support of marriage in Indiana. Do all those demonstrations, do they have any type of effect on what the judges decide?
You know, as a sort of formal matter of legal doctrine, no, but I do think it matters that we've seen a real sea change across the country, and certainly here in Indiana, on the amount of support that we see for same-sex marriage rights.
Thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you for asking me.
Appreciate your insight.